The future of work in Michigan is the focus of an ongoing initiative here at Detroit Public Television. Recently, I took part in a One Detroit town hall at Henry Ford College that examined the role of higher education in growing Michigan's population and keeping Gen Z talent right here in the state. I led a panel discussion on the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion on educational and economic success. Here's a portion of that conversation.
You were the first person in your family to go to college, a really important milestone, and now you're working on access for other folks. So I want to start with you talking about how we break down some of these barriers that we have for people of color in particular to get into higher ed, but also the focus that you guys have, which is on the families and the students. And not so much on the institutions and what they can do, and how important that distinction is.
Yes. So I am new in the TICAS space, so the Institute for College Access and Success, short TICAS. But I come from the college access and success space, and I spent a considerable amount of time in financial aid as well. So from that experience, and also being a first-generation student from Detroit, and hearing the narratives that exist in our community, the aspect of transparency in education and exposure becomes extremely important. A lot of times these decisions are being made based off of hypothetical situations that someone else has experienced without the actual engagement and understanding of how these systems work and how to navigate these systems. And a lot of times us as professionals, we look at it as we want to simplify things as much as possible. We want to take the barriers off their plate, but the reality is life is life. And we still have to navigate these systems. So teaching us what is coming before us, what these things mean. So like the conversation on specifically like the labor market, for example, it is rare that that is a discussion in the Black community about what it means to get a college degree and how it will position you as it relates to stability. What we think, especially in a blue collar state, is you work. You work hard. You put your head down and you work hard. That is what we are taught in our homes. And for me, I looked around when I made a determination that I was going to college in the 3rd grade, because I looked around my community and I was like, what is the one thing that no one has done here? And that was go to school.
At Detroit Future City, you guys are trying to put this in the context of the greater kind of barriers and challenges that we face in communities of color, and particularly in the city of Detroit, to economic success. Talk about how that higher ed access and focus relates to the other gaps that we see in our communities.
I really think about this in several layers. So, I really want to ensure that our institutions are really grounded in diversity and in equity and inclusion and justice. Are we trauma-informed, and are we human-centered in the way that we are designing our programs and our services? Meaning, are we actually listening to the individuals that we're seeking to serve and incorporating their voice before we design, as we implement, and as we evaluate? So that's one layer. Another thing that is really important is that these institutions are working across systems to solve quality of life issues that people are experiencing. They're not just coming to you as students. There are housing issues and transportation issues and childcare issues and all kinds of things that they're experiencing at the environmental level, at the community level, and in society. We come, to your doors having experienced a whole host of things that somebody at your office may not have experienced before. So that it's really important to be working across systems as an institution to address those quality of life issues. And one other layer I'll just kind of speak to briefly is just the partnerships. How are these institutions partnering with organizations who may be employers and organizations who could be institutional partners? What does that partnership look like? And are you also requiring that those partnerships are grounded in DEI and trauma-informed care and also human-centered? Are we requiring the institutions that we send young people to for employment to be good corporate citizens? Or are we setting them up to be in something cyclical and creating more trauma in the process?
This is the context in which we're talking about growing talent, growing the population here in the state of Michigan. It's a pretty big hill that sits in front of us. But talk about how we disrupt the things that we just heard, I guess, from a state level and from the level of policy making in order to get more people to want to stay here, and then, of course, to come here as well.
So how do we disrupt, right? First of all, I think we can't disrupt unless you actually know what these barriers are, right? Really understanding. I know that within the council, we've created very high-level recommendations, but we also have to go to our actual population and see what are the issues facing Michiganders specifically, those who are housing insecure, the mental health issues that are going on, right, for students, the supports that are actually needed. We can say, yes, great, okay, now you've gotten to college and here's your path to a job, but what are all those supports that are needed within every single semester to help that student get through and get to that job? And the work that I do with our Employment Equity Learning and Action Collaborative, ELAC, is also we've been focusing on what do workplaces need to do to be able to help their worker stay in that job, retain that job, and advance in their job as well, right? So when we think of policy recommendations, we typically go high level, but I feel like we need to get into the minutia of it all in order to be really able to help Michiganders get through that trajectory and stay in Michigan.
Yeah, yeah.